Good morning, Pastor Luke. Thank you so much for joining us. Pastor Luke is the pastor of the Alpharetta SDA Adventist Church, of which my membership is. He's our new pastor. We are delighted to have him. He brings a ton of energy. And Pastor Luke, this week we've been talking about small groups, and I know that's something that you really champion, communities, small communities. But we really want to know how we can be intentional on reaching those people that we want to influence, those people that we want to engage in, those people that we want to have Bible studies with. And I just want you to give us a few tips, tried and proven tips that you use for engaging people to help with our viewers. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So, first off, thanks for having me on. I think the ministry you've got going on is fantastic. I think the Lord is really leading in it, which is, really, really cool because in such a time as this, man, that's, the fact that we have ministries that are thriving, not just surviving is, man, just what a testament to the power of God. But, when it comes to small groups or when it comes to like witnessing in general, every Christian really wants to witness. I've never met a Christian that doesn't want to see their brother or their sister or their kids or even, in some instances, their spouse come to know Jesus. I've never met a Christian that doesn't really want their neighbor or their coworker or their boss to come to know Jesus. And so as Christians, right, we're told to spread the good news of the gospel. And so how do we do that? In a world that is increasingly fragmented, we're increasingly fractured along so many different lines. And so how do we, in a very simple way, open the door for the opportunity to share our faith as well as to invite someone into what I call a discipleship process? And the reason why I call it a discipleship process is because, I'm pretty zeroed in on the ultimate objective in a witnessing conversation is to make an appeal for a time to get together to study the Bible. I think that should be the number one objective because ultimately our faith is built off of the testimony of Jesus found in Scripture. And so we could say a lot of things and we could, be super eloquent, but until we're directing them to Scripture, they might rely on us for their faith, and we don't want that. We want them to rely on Jesus. So the primary objective of every witnessing conversation is how can I get them into an invitation so I can invite them to study the Bible with me. But let's back up a little bit and let's say you know someone, right? Let's say God has placed somebody on your heart. If God has placed somebody on your heart to study with or to witness to, or you just have a burden for them, I think that's the person you should primarily focus on. Some people would argue that you should focus on like what we in the Christian world might call low-hanging fruit. So people who have filled out a Connect card or people who have expressed some level of interest in like an outreach program or a health fair or, something like that. But if God has laid somebody specifically on your heart, I think that's where you should begin. And what that does is that brings us really to the probably most crucial aspect of witnessing and discipleship in general. And that is, it really should be complete reliance on God. Sometimes we get carried away with all the resources that are out there and we become overly reliant on the resources like the It Is Written study guides or Amazing Facts study guides or Truth Link Bible study guides or the pastor or the elders or, et cetera. But what we see in the New Testament church was the members of the New Testament church, the members of the early Christian church were equipped in how to win their neighbors, their coworkers, their enemies, even into a relationship with Jesus. And I think we should focus on getting back to that. But that takes a supreme level of humility, knowing that I'm going to have to rely on God in this. And so if you have somebody that's already on your heart, whether that's your husband, whether that's your wife, whether that's your brother, your sister, your neighbor, your coworker, your boss, whoever it is, chances are the reason why God has laid them on your heart is because he wants to use you as the tool to open up their heart, to expose maybe an idol that they are worshiping. And, in previous times, you could interest people in the Bible or in God through Bible prophecy. And you could explain to them these, magnificent truths of the Bible, found in Daniel, found in Revelation, and how the Bible accurately predicts our day and age. I mean, that's what brought William Miller to the faith. That's what's brought so many people to a trusting faith in Jesus, is understanding that the Bible actually depicts or tells us what's going to happen. And we're seeing it play out now. And so sometimes we double down on that approach. But as this thing called secularism has started to increase, really what it's done is it's taken on the form of a religion. I would say secularism is kind of a form of religion. And there are idols that are very prominent in this culture. Some of the idols are like money, power, intimacy, influence. These are idols that everyday Americans are being marketed to, or these idols are, being projected on us every single day, from billboards, from commercials, from whatever it is. And so chances are we all, to a certain level, are feeling that tension. And if our friends and our neighbors have bought into the false promises that they have, that they offer of, like, false freedom, false identity, false hope, false love, then they're gonna be kind of miserable. And so if God has laid a person on your heart to disciple, chances are it's because he's going to use you to open up their heart to bring out that idol and replace that idol with him, the only God that's worth worshiping. And so how do you do that? Right? Well, I think that we can take a physician's-like approach in kind of trying to guide a conversation, just a natural conversation with them, to get that ball rolling and ultimately make an appeal so that we can maybe sit down and study the Bible with them. But it's going to get kind of scary and kind of intimidating really quickly. But that's why the number one point is just humility on this is what God is going to do, not what we're going to do. And so we're going to lean on him because he is faithful. So let's say, for instance, we sit down and we're talking with our coworker. Now, as a Christian, if they know us well enough, hopefully they know we're a Christian. I mean, I'm completely unashamed to tell anyone that I follow Jesus. It doesn't matter. You could hate Jesus. You could think all Christians are incredibly ignorant. They have no idea what they're talking about. How could you look at science and still follow this false religion, whatever? It doesn't matter. I'm going to let them know that I'm a Christian. That's first and foremost. I'm unashamed of that. So, if your coworker doesn't know that you're a Christian, you should start there. If your family member doesn't know that you're a Christian, you should start there. If your neighbor doesn't, you should start there, because if they don't know, then you can't do this first step. Because the first step really is in regular conversation, you're talking about how the weekend went, right? It's Monday, you go into your office, or, you're on your Zoom call nowadays, or, you're in a meeting or whatever, and you're doing a little side chat that you're the boss who's doing the presentation doesn't know that you're chatting with one of your coworkers, about, did you catch the game, right? How crazy that Harden block, or, whatever, right? He actually played defense, like you're just doing small talk. And as they're sharing something about their weekend, you should be prayerfully looking at, God, is this where you're working in their life? So they're talking about how they were out and they were cutting the yard, and they were just overwhelmed by just how peaceful nature is, right? Or they might not even articulate it that way, but they're just talking about how, I got a lot of chores done over the weekend and it just made me feel so much better. It kind of took away stress, right? As a Christian, I can say, oh, is that where you see God working in your life right now?
So
or,
you would actually
is that where
say those words?
I would say if somebody was like, yeah, over the weekend I got a lot of chores taken care of, or like currently Chris and I's air conditioning is out. And I know, what a time for it to go out on her birthday. But, so over the weekend, I got some chores to do on Sunday, and, kind of before Sabbath comes. And And, you know, so somebody might say like, oh yeah, I got a lot of chores taken care of. And it just, oh man, it just made me feel so much better. Like coming home, it's a lot less stressful. And so I would articulate it this way. I'd be like, oh, cool. Like, is that where you saw God working in your life this weekend by bringing peace? And what I've just done there is I've shifted, and it's a very hard shift. And I don't think we need to be super tactful, because the idols of modern culture are not tactful. I mean, they bombard you with images and loud images. So I don't think we need to be, you know, super subtle in every case, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm going off the fruits of the Spirit, right? Because they've talked about how they did something and it brought peace, or they did something and it alleviated stress, or they did something and it made them a little bit more disciplined, or they did something and it brought a little bit more joy. Or, you know, like I'm taking the fruits of the Spirit and I'm saying, oh, that you experienced a fruit of the Spirit. So is that where you see God working in your life? So then most people, when you ask them that question, if they're not a Christian, what do you mean? That's the answer that you really want. If you get that answer, then the ball is rolling. And it might manifest itself in I'm not tracking. You know, I don't know. How do you know where God's working in your life? Or, you know, like you want kind of like this perplexion of what are you talking about? And if you get that, then you can go to the second step. If they say, oh, I don't believe in God, that's okay. You might see that as like, oh, well, man, now the door got shut. But now what you've done is you've established the playing field of you are the Christian and they are the person who does not believe in God. And so now you know where to begin in your prayer life, because you know that they don't believe. But if you don't know that they don't believe, or that they believe a little bit, it's going to be really, really difficult how to have that conversation. So if they say, oh, what do you mean? Well, then you go to the second question, right? And you ask them, what was it about doing the weekend chores that brought you peace? Like, why did you feel like it was peaceful? Because you're just kind of asking a little bit more of, you know, where did that come from? Why do you think that happens when things are in order, when things are in alignment? Why do you think it brings peace? Why do you think it de-stresses you? I mean, all you did was take care of your yard, or, you know, you fixed your HVAC, or, you know, whatever it is, right? Like, why would that bring a level of peace? You did a chore. I mean, growing up, chores never brought peace, right? You did chores so you could get out of the house sooner, you know, or get that allowance. Like, but so the second question really is, you know, an inquisitive question as to, you know, why do you think, because you did chores over the weekend, or because you got a lot of work done, it brought peace? And most people, I have found, most people still don't understand how to respond to that, because most people don't think about these things. You know, most people don't sit down and say, man, why is it that when I come home to an orderly house, my thoughts are more relaxed? You know, why when I come home to, you know, a wife that is my best friend, am I so, you know, at peace and excited to get home? You know, why when I sit down and just de-stress, I just sit down and almost, you know, in a modern American way, meditate, right? Where you just kind of sit and just take a second, right? Do all of a sudden I feel like I have more of a level of control over things, or I just feel a little bit more at ease, right? Like, where do these things come from? What's the, I mean, that's this, if it's manifesting a gospel value or a gospel fruit, the fruit of the Spirit, that's because God is working. He's actively working, because God cares more about these people. Believe it or not, God cares more about these people than we do. And
I believe that. Yes.
That is so liberating to think about, because sometimes we don't consider that. Sometimes we think, if I don't do my job, this person's not going to be in heaven. And it's like, no. God is the one who does the job. God is the one who changes hearts. God is the one who rescues us. He uses us as a tool. So you've asked, you know, is that where you see God working in your life? or, where did you see God working in your life? Because it can, the question can really manifest it in many ways. They say, what do you mean? Or I'm not following, or what, that's out of left field, right? And then you just you follow up with a second question, why, where do you think that peace came from? Or where do you think that joy came from? Or, why do you think it is that every time you do this, it brings joy or self-control or strength? And you're going to know, how to do this because you're having a conversation with somebody that This isn't, a cold call. This is somebody that you see on a daily basis. So you're going to know how to converse spiritually with them because you've spent the time praying about it and you know this individual. And then after they respond to your second question and they say, I've never really thought about that. That's when you get an opportunity to make an invitation and say, hey, I have, how do I word this? You could go super strong. You could say, hey, would you like to learn how to find peace, that will never leave based off your circumstances? Or, hey, would you like to find a joy that is almost just uncontrollable or inexpressible? Or would you like to find a level of self-control so that, you don't have to continually try New Year's resolutions, but that you can start now and actually have victory over those bad habits? Or, you have the opportunity to extend based off of how you see God working in their life, an invitation to sit down, and then you can show them where you find it.
So you're
and
going
how
to
they can
tell,
find it
you're going
more
to,
consistently.
You're going to invite them to sit down with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not sit down with the pastor, because the pastor doesn't know them. You're the one, you're their coworker, you're their friend, you're their neighbor, you're their family member, you're their enemy, even if you're their enemy. They know you. And so, you should invite them to sit down with you. That's where it gets very difficult and kind of scary because, and by difficult, I don't mean hard. I mean difficult in the sense of you won't want to do it because it's going to be kind of uncomfortable. Because then what you do, the very first step after you have that conversation, or just 3 steps, where do you see God working in your life? What do you mean? Why did you feel peace or joy or self-control? Or, where do you think that comes from? Oh, I've never really thought about that. Oh, okay. Well, hey, I happen to know where we can find that on a very meaningful basis and consistently. Oh, wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Would you like to sit down sometime? Yeah, sure. Okay, Tuesday at 7, et cetera, right? That's kind of how the conversation will flow. So then when you leave that conversation, you go home and you write down everything you know about them. You write down everything you know about, or that you remember from the conversation. So you write down, what's their job? How long have they been working there? What's their, are they married? Do they have kids? Do I know if they're in their dream job? Do I know if they want to work here for 5 more years and then leave? You write down literally everything about them. Where are they from? What was their family life growing up? As a Christian, we should be so interested in the people that we are trying to bring to Jesus. We should be so interested. We should be more interested in the people we're trying to win to Jesus than what the news is telling us, than our favorite sitcoms, than our favorite playlists. Let's be honest. It's just that's just how it is. Jesus was so interested in us that he literally left his kingdom to come and be incarnated to take on the sin of the world on our behalf. He literally sympathized and empathized with us on every level. That's the supreme level of interest. So we should be super focused. So we get home and we write down everything, and then we pray, Lord, I know that you've been involved in this person's life way before I even came into the picture. And so, Lord, I want to be your tool to come alongside you, to be used kind of like a scalpel to open up their heart so that you can uproot the idols that are causing them to be exhausted, that are causing them to be stressed out, that are causing them to be depressed, that are causing them to to have faulty relationships with friends or their marriage, or to have anger and frustration. Lord, help me to be that scalpel so that you can go in and do what you do so well and cause a transformation. And Lord, I don't know where to begin, because they've said all of this and I've written all of it down. I write it down on a whiteboard. That's just kind of my process.
Mm-hmm.
But I've written it down on pieces of paper. I mean, I've written it down on a napkin because I didn't want to forget some things. And then I sit down, and as I prayed, Lord, show me where to begin. I wait.
Mm.
And I've waited, I've waited an hour before I felt like I had any level of clarity in where to begin. I've waited several days before, which is, for those of us who are preparation addicts, knowing that we set a time for Tuesday at 7 and, you're having this conversation on a Thursday or, something like that. I mean, that you're just like, oh man, okay. You're starting to already think, what's your backup plan, right? Okay, well, I know some lessons, study guides. It is written, Amazing Facts, TruthLink, Daniel 2 is the starting point on the authority of Scripture, et cetera. But I say you wait, because God will show you. Like, God will bring to mind a starting point. And the starting point might be radically different than any other Bible study you've been given or you've seen given. I mean, I've started a Bible study with tithe. Very first Bible study, tithe, because they were stressed out about their financial management. And so I thought God was playing a prank on me, because I just was like, no, Lord, no, we should start with grace, or anything else, Lord. But no, it just drove home, and it wasn't like this audible voice. It was just this firm conviction, just out of nowhere, tithe, period. And so I went out on faith and just said, okay. I prepped a very brief Bible study, not 20 verses. I did 3 to 5 verses, because I want this to be, memorable. I want this to actually be, of substance for them. And we can't memorize 20 verses. I mean, I have a pretty good memory, but if I sat down and was like, okay, cool, I'm going to memorize 20 verses. I mean, there's just no way. So I try to keep it very brief, very simple, and just do a lot of application in the studies, because eventually, if what we're sharing is so good, they'll be interested in more, and they'll start to text you, hey, what was that passage? Hey, do you have any other Bible verses? Hey, will you pray for me? And then all of a sudden what you've done is you've now been equipped, or you've been picked up by the hand of God, and you're being used as that scalpel to open up their heart so that they can see the idols in their heart they're exhausted by trying to worship. And now they're ready to slowly, little by little, let them kind of fade, because they want what you're offering. And that is the most complete story, the most complete hope in the world, and that is Jesus. And so, I mean, it takes supreme level of humility, because you can't just assume that you're going to use a study, format, because chances are you're going to be making the Bible study yourself, which, I think is the way that God intended it, because now you're growing as a disciple. Amen. And, they're also growing as a disciple. And I mean, I guess just one final point, Curtis, if you would let me. So, because I can talk about this all day, but I think a reason why we have such stagnant Christians is because we don't do discipleship. We tend to do information relay, or we tend to really just try to get into the meat of a passage, and we don't get up from our pew, or we don't get up from our seat, or we don't get out of our house and really try to invite somebody into a discipleship journey. And discipleship is not just using a bunch of resources to win people into the baptismal tank. I mean, discipleship is helping people become more and more like Jesus. And the minute somebody starts responding to what Jesus is doing, even if they don't know that Jesus is doing anything, technically they're on the journey of being a disciple. I mean, that's in John chapter 1 and John chapter 2. And so I think the number one way to strengthen our spiritual life is by trying to be a disciple maker.
Mm.
And so what I've done is, if I give somebody a Bible study, I'm giving somebody a Bible study now, I make them give the main point of our Bible study. I make them share that with somebody else, even day one. And what that does is that reinforces that this is news, not information. And that safeguards me from just trying to show them a cool fact from the Bible, because I don't want to show them a cool fact. I want to show them the good news that because of Jesus, and I end every study with some point on Jesus and what he's accomplished on our behalf, and the reason why we can have peace or joy or love or self-control or, forgiveness or et cetera. It's because of Jesus. And so I want them to understand that this is news. And so they have to share this with somebody else, or they can't come back. Like I don't want to spend all this time on somebody who's going to just hoard the truths of God. And so, I don't tell them that, right? But I have told them that, hey, you have to share this, if you really want to learn more, you have to tell somebody else about this. But the thing is if you set the bar that high in your initial meeting, when you sit down to share with them, I have yet to have somebody who said, I don't want to come back. So yeah, I've seen this work. I was going through, I was thinking of all the stories that I have just last night. And I have some crazy stories that people would have said, no way, they're too far gone. Or, God's not working in that area of their life. And yet, you show up to their church on Sabbath and they're there, and they're not, which there's nothing against back row folk. I'm a back row person. But they're in the front row and they have their Bible in print and they have a journal, or they're taking notes, or they're taking pictures of the screen, or, and they're bringing their friends to church. And we have stories of that. And I think that's what we can be doing.
Yeah. Pastor, that was very informative, very, very helpful. I know it was a blessing to me, and I know our viewers are going to be blessed by it. But it's a real shift in thinking from the traditional way that we go about evangelizing people. Traditionally, at least certain segments of our church, we feel like our job is that to win people, like that initial conversation, is to win them to coming to attend our church. But like my goal isn't really to have a Bible study with them necessarily, but if I can convince them to come to my church, you, the pastor, will seal the deal. And then I just keep doing that. I just keep inviting people to church so you can seal the deal. But what you are suggesting or advising us to do is to be personally responsible for discipleship.
Yeah.
Okay. That says it all. Well, listen, Pastor, I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to join our Hit the Mark Sabbath School. And we really want to have you on as a panelist when your schedule allows. I know for this Sabbath, you're not only speaking for the church, you're teaching the local Sabbath school class, but we really have to have you on with our panel real soon.
Yeah, no, I'd appreciate that. So yeah, no, it'd be fun.
All right, man. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. See you, Curtis.